This bad boy's named Todd, and he is the baby imposter. But this is Bob, and he is the actual imposter. Imposter, because this is the real imposter, and his name is Dave. Now Dave is equipped with a rapid fire knife and feet that walk, and by walk, I mean drive, using 3D printed treads that I definitely designed all by myself and didn't steal from some lad on the internet. But guys, this is definitely the most dangerous thing I've ever created, but do not worry, it is off right now. I mean, I'm not that insane, I'm not just gonna leave it on all the time. Whoa! To turn this on, all I have to do is flip the switch back here, and it's ready to kill. All right, here we go. I think I flipped the wrong switch. Now that Dave's actually in hunt mode, he's gonna start looking around for something to demolish. But Dave isn't your average imposter. He doesn't just randomly wander around eliminating every single crewmate he sees. Instead, Dave makes a carefully calculated plan, and he strategically executes said plan using complex trigonometry. He starts off by trying to eliminate the cameraman to get rid of all the evidence. He then does something he likes to call dumb fusion. And that's where you try to confuse the enemy by acting dumb. So maybe he'll walk up to a wall and stab it, or just fall over and act helpless, or maybe he'll just start stabbing the air randomly. Why did it do that? And as you can hear, it even confuses me. Then, once the enemy is confused and doesn't see him as a threat, he uses rocket science level algebra to approach and eliminate his enemy. Dave is just a genius. Now in Among Us, you're not always selected to be the imposter. Normally, you're just a super lame crewmate. So I decided to give Dave crewmate mode. Now you're probably wondering, well, how do you change the modes? Is it a switch or some kind of weird engineering device? Well, it's actually quite simple. All you have to do is unscrew the back, plug this thing into the computer, rewrite the code, send the code to the thing, unplug it, screw the back on, and then realize you messed up the whole thing and have to redo it. And just like that, you've switched modes. So you know how normally being a crewmate is super boring, you can really only do tasks or report a dead body? Well, this guy? Yeah, he can't do either. So crewmate mode is pretty much just imposter mode, except instead of obliterating his enemies, he just talks.
I just saw Red Man.
He mostly says random stuff, but every once in a while he'll actually say something that's insanely smart. I mean, you gotta hear this.
Subscribe to Electo.
So remember how the imposter pretended to be dumb, but he was actually a genius? With crewmate mode, he's just straight up dumb.
Subscribe to Electo.
He also loves running into things. And sometimes he'll just have a straight up seizure. Or out of nowhere, he'll just die. Now, it wouldn't be Among Us unless there were some super sick hats for Dave to wear. So, I made a few. First hat that I made, it's the toilet paper hat. Yeah, so it's a pretty cool hat that I made, right guys? Originally, I was actually gonna design, 3D print, and try to make some pretty realistic looking hats based off of the ones in the game. But then I realized I have absolutely no idea how to do that, so this is a banana. And there you have it, a flawless looking banana hat. I also really like the egg hat, so I got myself an egg. Dumb. Now I'll show you some never seen before Among Us hats that I just came up with on my own, and maybe we'll see them in a future Among Us update. This first hat is called the Fitness Guru hat. This knife is kind of weak sauce. I want to see what would happen if I replaced this rubber knife with a real knife. So, how exactly am I going to do that? Well, let's see what this thing can do. This is some calc homework. Let's see what happens if we give Dave a math problem. Oh, look at that. It couldn't do basic math. Maybe it can cut through some cardboard.
Wow.
Couldn't cut through the cardboard. Let's see if it can cut a balloon. Oh, I got a towel. Wow, Dave was able to just walk up and puncture the water balloon all by himself. He's incredible. Maybe he can cut through the soda can too. Show him what you got. Oh, perfect. Dave's already proven himself a master samurai ninja. Now let's see how he does against the ultimate challenge. A banana. you look at that? He's a regular fruit ninja. So you guys know those baby crewmates that follow those other crewmates around until that crewmate gets brutally slaughtered by the imposter? Let's make one of those. Here, as you saw before, I have the shell of a baby crewmate, and I just need to make it so that it can follow Dave around. So to build the big imposter, of course, I started with the design, then I 3D printed it. I actually wasn't able to print him in one go because he ended up being so fat that I had to print him in 8 different pieces. To give him the ability to walk, I used these 3D printed treads, and they actually worked really well. So I stuck them into these 3D printed pieces that could fit snugly into the imposter's feet. Then I added some electronics and boom, I had the world's first pair of walkable shorts. After gluing the first half of Dave's head onto his body, I created the knife mechanism, which was actually pretty simple. However, getting the mechanism installed into the body took a long time. I don't actually know what was so hard about installing it and why that took forever, or what in the world caused the prints to keep breaking, and what happened to Steve. When I got the knife system working, I was able to finish putting together Dave's head. Then it was spray paint time. For some reason, I decided it was a good idea to paint it at 12 o'clock at night, but thankfully I didn't have to be outside by myself because soon some little crewmate-sized buddies decided to come over and hang out. Oh, also, PSA, don't spray paint badly. I had to repaint that boy like 3 times and it took like 2 weeks. Once it was painted correctly, it looked epic. So I installed all the electronics and mechanical parts, did a little coating, and it was done. But how I build this mini one is going to have to be a little bit different than how I built the big one. Because not only is it mini, it also needs to be able to follow around the imposter. And that brings me to vacuum car. I'm not actually sure what this is called, but I do know that the word vacuum car sounds pretty cool. This is basically just a remote control car, but instead of using a normal controller, it follows the red light made by this controller. It also has a vacuum in it, so maybe it can go on walls, or maybe just act as the world's dumbest Roomba. But either way, I don't think we'll be needing that part. All I really need to do is install the wheels into the feet of the baby crewmate, install the sensors into the front, and install the controller into the back of the imposter. Once I got everything installed into the shell, I decided to do a quick test. And to nobody's surprise, it loved falling over, so I added some temporary weights. Then I noticed that the battery was draining super quickly, so I added a better battery. Then I noticed it wasn't following the light at all, so I punched myself in the face 100 times. For some reason, no matter what I tried, it just wasn't working. And this whole thing was proving to be a lot harder than I initially thought. But I'm no stranger to failure, so I removed the electronics, turned off my soldering iron, and deattached the hip implants. But then, out of nowhere, I had an idea. An idea so incredible that even Dave, the imposter genius himself, would be impressed. So I turned back on my soldering iron, reinstalled the electronics, and implemented my idea.
Subscribe to Electo.